What's going on, everyone? It is the Derf, and today I'm bringing you a build centered around my Titan. My favorite build of all time surrounding Thundercrash. It is not a build that no one's ever talked about before, but man, is it fun. And even in Act 3, and especially with Rite of 9 upon us, I thought it was perfect opportunity to revisit some fan favorite exotic armor, some fan favorite super damage, and of course, my favorite DPS character, the Titan. So if you guys have been looking for a build to take into the Rite of 9 dungeon and come out the other side victorious while also dealing exceedingly high damage numbers, this is the build for you. Generate tons of orbs of power and support your teammates by leading the charge. I always love it when I get to bust out my Titan, and this one is no different. Let's go. Alright, so let's break it down how we're going to spam our Thundercrash as well as Consecration here with the Prismatic Titan subclass build. First up, you gotta make sure you equip Thundercrash. Hurl through the air like a missile and crash into targets to inflict meteoric damage. This is an instant burst super, so once you activate it and it's completed, you can go back to just using your weapons and abilities to rebuild it back up. For abilities, we're going to go with Rally Barricade. I prefer the Strafe Lift. You're going to need Frenzied Blade as it can stack up to 3 times. And for the grenade, I prefer the Pulse Grenade, but I know there's going to be a lot of people out there that prefer the Suppressor Grenade simply because it can deal with overload champions. For the aspects, we're going to go with Consecration. While sliding, activate your charge melee ability to launch a wave of solar energy forward, damaging and scorching targets in front of you as you leap into the air. While airborne, activate your charge melee again to slam into the ground, create a second larger wave of damaging solar energy. If the wave hits a scorched target, they ignite. So, when a scorched target ignites, it also stuns unstoppable champions. So now we have 2 of the 3 possible champions handled, and we haven't even gotten to the rest of the build. Our next aspect is going to be Knockout. Critically wounding a target or breaking their shield infuses your melee attacks with arc energy and increases your melee range and damage for a short time. Defeating targets with melee attacks makes you amplified and restores a portion of your health. Defeating more powerful combatants increases the amount of health restored. So one of the key things here is that we are going to want to be amplified as often as possible. That is going to pair with our exotic armor of choice, which in turn is going to help us get our super back extremely quickly. We're also going to do a secondary modification to increase the super energy regen when we're using our melee attack, which I'll get to in the armor. For the fragments, we're going to go with Facet of Purpose. Picking up an orb of power grants Bolt Charge. Bolt Charge. Accumulate stacks of Arc Bolt Charge. While you have Bolt Charge, sustained weapon damage generates stacks of Bolt Charge. At maximum stacks, any ability damage generates a powerful bolt of Arc Lightning at the target's location, and receiving a stack of Bolt Charge grants you melee energy. So this is going to be key. Any chance that we can get to generate Bolt Charge is going to give us melee energy back. So as we're using our Consecration, we are going to be regenerating melee energy with each hit that grants us Bolt Charge, if that makes sense. So it's going to be an endless regeneration of your ability energy, in this case your melee, but since we're not going to be using Frenzied Blade like normal, it's not going to matter because we're going to be doing more damage to multiple enemies at the same time. Next up is Facet of Awakening. Rapidly defeating targets with light or darkness damage or super final blows generates an elemental pickup of the matching damage type. So we're going to be generating Ionic Traces and Fire Sprites. Those are going to be the 2. If you do end up using your Frenzied Blade without using the Consecration, you do have the chance to generate Tangles. Next up, we got Facet of Protection. While surrounded by combatants, you are more resistant to incoming damage. While Transcendent, the effect is increase. So the main goal of this build is to be as aggressive as possible. In order to be aggressive as possible, you kind of do want to spec into as much resistance as you can, even outside of your armor mod setup. Facet of Sacrifice is up next. While you have an Arc, Solar, or Void buff, ability Final Blows grant bonus Darkness Transcendence energy. This is going to be the play here. is trying to get your Transcendence as much as possible. And I'm going to get to that here in a second. Last up, we've got Faceted Balance. Rapidly defeating targets with light damage grants melee energy. Rapidly defeating targets with darkness damage grants grenade energy. So up here I'm highlighting Transcendence. It doesn't often get mentioned in any of my builds because it's just sort of there. But one of the things that you get when you are Transcendent is you gain increased ability regeneration, increased weapon damage, and damage resistance against combatants. So the main gameplay here is going to be you want to try to generate Transcendence as fast as possible. How you do that is going to be completely up to you, but when we get to the weapons, I'm going to go over some of the best ones you can use and show you how you can modify it to deal with champs depending on the activity that you find yourself in. So the main gameplay, once you have Transcendence, you're going to activate it and you're going to use your consecration over and over and over again. What that's going to do is that's going to pair with the synergy of our exotic armor as well as a couple of other mods that we're going to have available to us. When we put all those things together, you're going to be generating your super, depending on the activity, in as little as 30 seconds. And no, that is not a joke. If the activity fits the bill, so to speak, and you have enough enemies around you, you can generate this super in about 30 seconds. However, if you are running a strike or possibly a raid or things where there's other mechanics going on and you're not just going to be focused on killing but doing other things, you can safely assume that if you're using this build how I'm telling you how to use it, you can generate your super in approximately 1 minute 30 seconds. When that comes to specifically like dungeon bosses or raid bosses where they have DPS rotations, you can safely assume that you're always going to have your super ready for that next DPS rotation, which means you're always going to be able to deal the maximum amount of damage, which is how we're going to generate our DPS numbers on top of everything else we're going to be doing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show a quick clip right here. I understand that this is a controlled environment and I understand that we're not doing GM level enemies. However, with the release of the Ride of the Nine, all the new things that are kind of coming into play to try to string us along until the release of the new drop for Destiny, The Edge of Fate, we need to come up with ways to get through these activities as easily as possible. This type of build is going to be perfect for it. You're going to be seeing a lot of enemies in the Rite of Nine, explore mode and things like that. Of course, you guys are familiar with the Nether Arena. You guys are familiar with Nightfalls. None of this is really going to be groundbreaking. There's builds out there from, content creators far and wide that go over how to do this type of playstyle. So I'm going to show this video clip right here. And as you can see, when you have Transcendence, when you're using your super, when you're spacing out your weapons, etc., 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 what you're essentially doing is stalling the delay of Transcendence. While you stall the delay of Transcendence, you are in fact beefing up your super regen. So depending on the activity, again, you can use Transcendence to gain your super, or you can pop Transcendence, then pop your super, and then go back to using your Consecration Slam and rotating your weapons through to generate a second super that you could use before your Transcendence bar is out, which means that once that is over, even though your Transcendence bar will be waning, for lack of a better way to put it, you'll be able to get maybe 1 or 2 more Consecration Slams in there, generating an absurd amount of super energy and getting you very, very close, if not almost all the way there, to getting a third super on deck. And then what you're going to want to do after that is you're going to want to try to get as much darkness and light transcendence energy built up before you activate that super again. Because if you don't, once you activate that super and you come back down from it, you're going to have to work a little bit harder to get your transcendence back. So the rotation is going to be transcendence, super, or pop both at the same time basically, and then using your consecration to generate your super back before the transcendence runs out. And if you are at about halfway or higher when you get that next super back, which is entirely 100% possible, you will be able to activate your second super and then go back to using your consecration to generate as much ability energy as possible for your super again, so that you can either have it on deck for that next DPS rotation, that next champ, that next whatever, however you guys want to do it. Once you get used to it, and again, I'm not saying anything that hasn't really been touched on by others. So this is more of a, we've got some new activities where this type of build can really shine, and this is one way that it can hopefully make it easier for you. So if you're doing the explore mode, you're running solo and you're doing the 9 passages and all that, and you want something that's just going to be, more powerful than your average build as your Titan, this will absolutely fit. It's got incredibly high survivability as well, since you're pretty much always going to be amplified as well as transcendent. And all of these other things that we're going to be able to do with this build make you just an absolute DPS machine, an ad clear machine. You're able to deal with very difficult enemies with high health. Virtually, again, nothing I'm saying is completely brand new at all. This is all pulling together my version of this build, which again, there's going to be plenty of, similarities to others out there. But how I use it with the weapons and everything, once I go through that, I think it'll make a lot of sense to you guys. And if it's something that you've never tried, you've seen these builds out there before, but I don't really know if it's for me, this is the perfect time to try it, because now more end game-ish activities have popped up and made it possible for solo players to be able to get some of these things accomplished without having the pressure of having to use LFG and Fireteam Finder. And this build will absolutely help you in your endeavors to get some of those rewards that otherwise you would have to have a team for, or just be really, 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 really good as a solo player to get through those things, or just have a lot of time, which not everyone has a lot of time to dedicate to solo running a dungeon. It just takes a lot of time. That's just all there is to it. For stat distribution, I'm recommending maxing out resilience and strength at a minimum. The discipline, having that above like a T6 is going to be nice, because you are going to be periodically throwing out your grenade, and because you are going to be generating stacks of bolt charge. One of the great things about that is you could throw out a grenade and it could cause a lightning strike, and you weren't even expecting that to happen, but guess what? You just got a bunch of bonus DPS just for using your abilities and trying to rotate through. The recovery and the intellect are absolutely not necessary to have any higher than a T3. However, if you do have your intellect, let's say at a T5, hey, that's more power to you, because your innate cooldown, if you're doing things like raids or dungeons where you have to run long distances before you get to the next encounter or whatever, it will regenerate faster in and of itself, so you have to do less mechanics with the build to generate your super back. But I'm telling you, I've seen people run this as low as a T1, so the specific number I saw was 18, and I've seen people get the super back just as quickly, maybe a little bit slower, but either way, we're talking seconds, not minutes. So don't feel like if you don't have perfect armor in the middle stats here, that it's really going to matter. You want your resilience to be as high as possible, because you are going to be playing aggressive. I would prefer if you had your mobility at least at a T3. I got kind of lucky with the armor rolls that I had and the mods that I was able to put on to bump my stats. But I know some people's may look different. So put your resilience at 10, try to get your strength to a 10, and try to get your discipline up to at least a T6 or a 7. In the kinetic slot, I highly recommend Lost Signal. Lost Signal is excellent for generating a ton of darkness transcendence energy. It's also incredibly easy to use if you have the auto-loading holster crafted on it. You can fire it, generate a darkness transcendence energy, and use your energy weapon to generate all the light transcendence energy while you do additional tick damage with Lost Signal. Everyone loves Lost Signal. I don't really think I've ever met anyone that doesn't. So this fits this type of build perfectly because you can benefit from the insane regen from a special ammo area denial frame to generate you that Transcendence energy with literally not having to do anything at all, but just fire it and keep on moving. Other good options if you're going to be dealing with champs. We can go with Scatter Signal if we're going to be dealing with Unstoppables. Of course, you can put on a Glaive. If you want to stun overloads, I highly recommend Incisor or a Penance, or really just any trace rifle. And then if you want to deal with barriers, I recommend using the Call so you can take advantage of the artifact. So one of the important things to notice here is I do not have any kinetic damage weapons in here. These are all darkness damage. That is very important. If you don't have a darkness damage weapon in your kinetic slot, you're going to be doing yourself a disservice. In the energy slot, yes, I know you saw this weapon being used, and yes, that was a little bit underpowered. But I'm telling you, if you have a Sweet Sorrow, Perpetual Motion, and tap the trigger, this thing is an absolute laser beam. 720 rounds per minute at 72 recoil, this thing should be bouncing a lot more. But when you craft it and you enhance those traits, this thing really is useful. A lot of people use this in the Crucible as well. It's kind of fallen off from like the meta as far as weapons of choice in general, but Sweet Sorrow still kicks. And with the artifact, we'll be able to generate ionic traces. So just keep that in mind as well. Other options if you're going to be doing just general content and you want to have something out there that you can use. You can always go with the Prosecutor and you can always go with Come to Pass. If you don't have either of those, you can absolutely run with like the Division. You can run with Vantage Point with Jolting Feedback. You can run Noxious Vetiver with Jolting Feedback. And then if you are worried or concerned about dealing with champs, I always recommend Iterative Loop if you're going to be dealing with Unstoppables. And the Guardian Games Trace Rifle, the Dynamic Sway Reduction and Jolting Feedback make this literally a laser beam on top of it already being a laser beam. So lots of different ways that you can customize it. I'm not going to tell you what's going to be best for you and your playstyle, but between the energy weapon options and the kinetic weapon options, if there's something that I haven't touched on, I think you guys kind of get the picture of how it's got to be. So you're just going to have to decide, okay, I'm going into this activity. Do I have to worry about champs? Yes or no? If I do, okay, what are my champ weapon options? Okay, do I have a darkness energy? Do I have a light energy? Okay, good, I'm covered. Am I going to have to worry about ammo economy? Those are all kind of like minuscule things you'll have to worry about. You guys are going to know. Once you get used to the mechanic of the actually using consecration, the weapons are going to be kind of like a secondary thought because you're always going to be looking for that next slam. In the heavy slot, there's really only going to be two options that I recommend. Thunderlord is the best bang for the buck as far as its stunning overloads, its lightning rounds, its feeding frenzy, its return stroke. You know it and you love it. The other option that would be good here would also be Microcosm. Now, Microcosm won't technically take advantage of anything other than its ability to stun overloads through the artifact. However, because this is an instant burst super, you will get bonus DPS done to that boss. Through its Paracasual Imbuement Beam, final blows with this weapon grant super energy. The weapon gains bonus damage once your super expires. You have 19 seconds. Oh man, I'm starting to space now. It's either 17 or 19 seconds of a countdown. As soon as your super expires and you hit the ground, you pull this weapon out and that countdown begins in the lower left hand of your screen. If you play it right, you can get 2 full magazines out, which are going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of about 152 rounds. I know what it says on the screen, 104. It's more than 104. On top of that, you'll be able to get your reload in and fire another full magazine. You'll still have a little bit of time left over, so you'll push past a little bit unless you want to just stop after 2 full magazines and then go back to using your abilities and trying to get your Thundercrash up again. So in Quarter Blades, this is going to be extremely useful because you'll be able to basically do your Prismatic, your Microcosm, your Thundercrash, and then rinse and repeat however you want to do it. For the helmet mod, go ahead and put on whatever general armor mod that you need. If you don't need one, you can absolutely suffice with just a minor mod. I recommend a heavy ammo finder. Unlike some of the other Titan builds out there, I do believe having the heavy ammo finder is important because you are still going to be relying on your heavy ammo to get you through some of the DPS rotations. One of the things we can also do to boost our super regen is put on a hands-on. Now, this isn't going to make or break the entire build, so if you don't want this and you want to put on a secondary weapon siphon, you can get away with that, and it's not going to really hurt too much. But hey, it's just another extra little bump back to your super. I want it back as fast as possible. Last but not least, if you do have it set up the way that I have it set up, you're going to have to put on a harmonic siphon, which means your arc weapons are going to be doing the main ad clear. So make sure you have an idea of arc weapons that you are comfortable with. Maybe they don't necessarily have to deal with champs, but hey, however you guys are playing, that's going to be what dictates. I mean, if you're just running Vanguards and basic Nightfalls, you don't have to stress too much about weapons. Just use whatever's comfortable. If you're running dungeons and there's encounters with aerial bosses and things like that, and you need to be accurate, okay, the selection's going to kind of have to be catered to what you need. But I'm not going to spend, too much more time talking about that, because realistically, it's not necessarily what weapons you have to use. It's getting that Transcendence energy back as fast as possible so that you can start the cycle of spamming. For the gauntlets, we're going to run with 3 heavy-handed mods, and we're going to run with 1 minor strength mod. Well, I'm going to. You can run with whatever minor mod that you need, if you even need one. The 3 heavy-handeds are going to grant us 1 orb of power for every second that we wait to use it. So pretty much you're going to be able to generate orbs of power on top of orbs of power with really no slowing down whatsoever. It is 100% worth doing this way. Don't worry about the extended reload time. If you have a weapon that's got somewhat of a fast reload, you probably won't even miss the bump to it anyways. Okay, Curious of the Falling Star. Glorious Charge greatly increases your Thundercrash damage and grants you damage resistance after impact. Melee final blows, while amplified, grant you super energy. Now, the super energy, if you've never played around with this piece of armor before, is very, very, very noticeable. You get chunks back if you hit more than one enemy with your melee and kill them. Now, how many chunks you get back, that's going to depend on how many kills your melee hits. Thank goodness we have Frenzy Blade equipped, so now we can spam a minimum of 3. There is a way to activate Consecration and not slam to the ground and still get melee kills. But most of the enemies that you're going to come into contact with probably won't die from just the Scorching Wave that goes out initially. You're going to want to slam down, so just keep that in mind. Also keep in mind that because of knockout, your melee kills are going to make you amplified. So you will always be amplified. You will always be getting bonus damage to bonus regen to your super. And then of course, you have increased Thundercrash damage once you get there. For modifications, I recommend speccing into the reserve mod of whatever element you have in your heavy. Since I'm running Thunderlord, I'm going to be running Arc reserves. But if you decide you want to run Microcosm, go ahead and switch it over to Kinetic. Make sure you have 2 damage resistance mods on here, and then whatever general mods you need. And yes, it's embarrassing to see me having to put a recovery mod on a piece of armor and look at the screen and go, man, I could have bumped my discipline up to a T9 and then put my intellect at a T4. But hey, them's the breaks sometimes, right? For our leg armor, we're going to go with Absolution, and we're going to go with Innervation. We're also going to go with Recuperation. You can switch out Recuperation for Invigoration. You could also do that with Innervation for Invigoration. The reason I have it set up like this is my melee regen is already at a T10, and I'm able to stack it 3 times. I'm also banking on proccing Transcendence regularly, so I'm not really concerned about it coming back. You're really only going to want to change these around when you're going into activities that are very, very slow moving. Such as like maybe a master lost sector where you're not quite barging through it at the speed of light, or maybe you're just doing, some explore mode stuff. You're not going too fast. You can probably forego the recuperation and put on the invigoration, and you'll be just fine. And then put on whatever general armor mod that you need. For the class item, we have some different options. Because my recovery is so low, I absolutely put on Font of Restoration. If you don't find yourself in that situation, but you are using your barricade regularly, go ahead and put on Distribution. All that's going to do is increase or decrease the cooldown of your abilities. So it does still pay to use your barricade, even though it's not one of those barricades that's going to give you unlimited stacks of bolt charge. Next up, we've got Reaper and, of course, Outreach. I want my melee back as fast as possible, and when I do use my class item, I want to be able to spawn an Orb of Power on my next weapon kill. To round it out, make sure you just put on whatever general armor mod that you need. For the artifact, I'm going to breeze through this, contrary to some of the other builds that I've done with like my Warlock and previous Titan builds. The reason I'm going to breeze through this is we're going to be mainly focusing on ability spamming. So the rest of this is just going to be kind of icing on the cake, so to speak. You want to make sure you're modded for whatever champs you need in the first column, okay? In the second column, it's going to be dependent on what you use. You can see that I have Unraveling Orbs and Vile Weave here. Do I necessarily need that? No, I could also put on Beam Medic if I am running a Trace Rifle. If you do have a weapon that's got the Time Loss Magazine Origin trait, you can put that on as well, so that way it's overcharged. And of course, you can use weapons that have the Subjugation Origin trait, because these two aren't really going to matter, but since you can swap in and out strand weapons, that's why I have these selected, because of course I was experimenting with this before I settled on what I settled on, but you guys might find it more enjoyable to do something different. In this column, I 100% recommend Elemental Siphon. Rapid final blows with a kinetic weapon or a weapon matching your equipped super grants an elemental pickup that matches your equipped super. So this is on top of our fragment in our class setup. We're going to be able to generate additional elemental pickups. So it makes the most sense to try to use an arc add clear weapon. If you do switch it out, the only style of weapon that will actually matter and activate this elemental siphon is a kinetic damage weapon. And I don't know too many people that are using Microcosm to clear adds. So if you do not want to use an arc weapon for your main add clear, take this off. Instead, you can put on virtually anything else. You could go with the Photonic Flare, you could go with the Disruptor Spike, you could go with King's Vestige, or since we're using Thunderlord, you can go with Hold the Line. In the fourth column, again, Horde Shuttle may or may not make it on your list of things that you need. If you are working with Strand a little bit, it might make sense to put it on, in case you do generate, a threadling by some means with a weapon. But you can also put on Harsh Refraction if you're using, the Trace Rifle in the energy slot. And you can, of course, never go wrong with Dreadful Finisher or Gold from Lead. In the last column, we're going to go with Limit Break. Casting a super while you are critically wounded or have an elemental buff matching your super element grants a period of increased super damage. So this is an instant burst super. We're already getting bonus DPS from our exotic armor of choice. Now we're going to get bonus DPS as long as we activate our super while we're amplified. And then, of course, Heavy Ordnance Regeneration, Heavy Machine Guns, grant increased damage resistance, and grenade and melee regeneration for a short time. You can also boost this, defeating powerful combatants, disorients nearby rank and file combatants. You probably don't need to boost this for regular content or maybe explore mode content, but if you do find yourself in like a higher end nightfall, maybe not a GM, you might consider boosting this. I don't really recommend Defibrillating Blast because we're going to be able to take care of stunning champs through our abilities as well as the weapons that we select. It doesn't really make sense to use Elemental Supercharger because I'm already getting bonus super energy from Cuirass. But I guess if you really wanted to, if you can exhaust targets and then kill them with your weapons that have matching super elements, so arc, you could theoretically double down on the amount of regen of super at an instant, but I'm telling you, it's really not going to matter. This one's going to be kind of a waste because then you're going to be worried about rotating your weapons in and out, and it's going to mess up your flow. Of course, Void Flux and to Shreds doesn't really apply here, and neither does Particle Reconstruction unless you do find yourself equipping a fusion rifle. So one of the reasons I recommend this build is, number one, it's extremely fun to use. There's nothing in this build that hasn't been talked about 100 times since the release of, Consecration, the final shape, and how to spam your abilities and those things, and Transcendence. Transcendence is so much fun with a Titan. And there's probably not a lot of people out there that haven't experienced what they can do while Transcendent with a Titan. But if you've never tried a build like this, or this might be the first time you're actually hearing this, which again, I'm not really going over anything that's completely, brand new or, groundbreaking, or no one's ever covered it before. This is just my take on it. This is just how I'm running it. But it is a lot of fun. You can take this into a lot of activities and come out the other end feeling like you didn't have to struggle very much, if at all. You can also take this into higher end game style activities. And again, I don't want to paint this as a meta build, but this build is just very easy to use. And if you've been dabbling, if you haven't been a Titan main, okay, and I was never a Titan main, but once I started getting into building, I had to find niches for each character. This is one of those niches where it's very easy to go back to. And I know some of you guys have seen my other builds where, I'm focusing on different exotic armors and those things. But this build is kind of one of those just go-to builds for a lot of people. And if it's not something you've tried, or maybe you just, made a Titan for the first time and you don't know what to do, this is a very basic build that it's not going to require a ton of grinding to at least get the mechanic down. The only grind you're going to have to deal with is, once you're getting serious about focusing your armor stats. But you can still have fun with this build without the greatest stats. You just won't be able to take it into harder activity. So in terms of fun factor, this is a 10 out of 10. In terms of being able to take this into a GM, people do take this into a GM. They just have to play a little bit differently because, again, you have to be aggressive with this build. And there's other Titan builds out there, one of which I've actually gone over. Actually, a bunch of them I've gone over that might be better suited for a lot of GMs out there than this build itself. But that doesn't mean this is less powerful. It's more of a survivability and convenience style. This is very aggressive by nature, and some of those other ones play a little bit smarter and more concerned about keeping your distance from enemies. Anyways, if you guys did find anything helpful in this video, please consider liking and subscribing. If you know a Guardian out there who could benefit from a video like this, or who might like a build like this, please send them my way or share this video with them. My goal is to help as many people as possible. If you guys are out there looking for a non-toxic gaming community, I do recommend following the link in the video description to my Discord. We have a lot of great people in there. There's no toxicity, no drama. It's just people helping people do whatever they need to do in the game. And we're talking like, if you just want someone to run Vanguard strikes with, I'm 100% positive that someone would be down for that. If you're a Gambit fan, Gambit doesn't get a lot of love. There's people out there that will gladly run with you. My Discord wouldn't be non-toxic if it wasn't for the members that are in there. So just shout out to my Discord. I know I say that, almost every video, but they really do make the Discord what it is, which makes it easy for me to recommend, that as kind of a safe haven for all Destiny players that, maybe you've just been part of toxicity groups, or maybe you've been part of a clan that wasn't as inclusive as advertised. This isn't a clan. This is just a group of gamers that just want to have some fun. So just take your time. If there's any confusing parts in this video, I'm going to have chapters. And if you have any questions, make sure to drop, a comment. Let me know what you thought of the build. Let me know if it helps you at all. Let me know how you modify the build to make it better for you. Some of you savvy veterans out there. Hey, that's what this game is all about. So, all right. I'm going to switch over right now. All right, so like I said before, nothing I'm going over right now is things that, is brand new that no one has ever heard of or talked about in content creators across, YouTube and other platforms. This is just a really solid build with the, the remaining weeks kind of waning here and people kind of looking for reasons to keep playing, keep the fun going. This is an easy, fun build that you can modify however you need to. You can get your super back quick. Again, it's easy to fit this into a variety of activities. So whether you're an LFG or you're running with your clan or maybe just a couple of buddies and you're thinking about taking on that next challenge, you can plug this build into virtually any situation. Ride of the 9, in my opinion, is one of the perfect places because you don't want to overcomplicate what you already know how to do. But this is the best example, and I'll leave you with this. I throw out my lost signal. You saw that I proc Transcendence or maxed it out. Now I'm going to hit it one more time, get my super, and then all you got to do is use your super and just rinse and repeat. So guys, thank you for checking out the video. Hope this build works for you. Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you next time. Take care.